Hello, this is Jose Preciado and I'm doing a screencast of an implementation plan for LD 570 Summer 2016. This is my final project in this class, and I think one of the things that is important to me in talking about this class and talking about this culminating activity is that it sure has opened my eyes to something that's been right in front of me. In fact, in many ways, right under my fingers. There is a lot of technology that can be used, that can be integrated, that can be leveraged to move the kind of change that I'm interested in forward. And I think as I discuss the implementation plan and the three components of the plan that we've been invited to do by this assignment, I think we'll find that I'm truly on path to be thinking deeply, richly, and really to personalize this kind of learning, because I think that I can make a shift in my professional work to address some of these things. Let me engage us in this presentation on my quote that I chose: "Free your mind, Morpheus, the Matrix." I think one of the things that was clear in that film, if you haven't had a chance to see it, is that we were probably engaged in two realities. And in that case, the film was the Matrix, or this virtual life was the reality, and personal life was not. And I wanted to free my mind, if you will, of this concern that I had that always relationships and always education and always the kinds of activities that I was going to find meaningful and valuable had to be without technology. And that isn't the case. In fact, over the last few weeks, I've been able to see how this proximity that that technology enables is really authentic and really personal. And in that regard, I'm going to be addressing the three areas to kind of, basically discuss how I'm freeing my mind. So, let's talk about this. Two of the readings that served as a precursor to preparing for The Philosopher were one by Will Richardson, and his brief article basically made the case that his children would benefit more from an educator who is interested in being, or who had indeed become, a professional learner, an expert learner, than an educator who is just a good teacher. And the paradigm shift here in thinking is that the skill set that the students should model, or that the students should reach, in fact, he used apprenticeship as the way to frame this modeling, is that the students would become experts themselves, not in the subject matter per se, but in the way of approaching learning. And I think in thinking about The Philosopher, about education, and then, another article that helped us, that served to maybe provoke some real innovative thinking here, is Dan Pink's discussion of personal learning, of having students basically take more ownership and more responsibility for their learning, and that teachers facilitate that. Let me use the cliche now. I think it's a cliche, by the way. This idea of the sage, not the sage on the stage, but the kind of the guide on the side. I think I just ruined that cliche. But I think it's important here because what we're really talking about are different roles. And one of the most important impacts that I gained from Kuru's readings and writings, his exploration of learning, his exploration and his professional growth over this period he describes in The Innovator's Mindset, is in fact things that are very critical. And for example, ownership. The ability of individual educators, individual learners, let's call us adult learners, to take responsibility and to take the responsibility of driving the learning, of motivating the learning, of personalizing the learning is so critical. And he used ownership as a way of framing that point. And I think it really speaks to what we're really doing, regardless of the availability of technology, regardless of what modality we're discussing. It really deals more with what is the intrinsic motivation of the individual to be connected to this learning process, to be motivated to help students think for themselves, problem solve, etc. And so ownership then is a key concept of an innovator's mindset, because if you facilitate for, let's say, colleagues or a community of learners the right path, they will assume ownership, and then they will take maybe those leaps that maybe they wouldn't do so if they didn't have a connection. Another important point that Kouros made in his discussions, and he used the song Call Me Maybe, which I think was really interesting because he apologized for using the quote, but he used it as an excellent way of describing something that is really, it just opens up the possibilities. Call Me Maybe became remixed or used in so many different ways. And really, that kind of just continues to build on this philosophical stance of how knowledge is personal, how knowledge has to have a connection and ownership. And I think this idea of being able to make changes, of this idea of being able to change the song Call Me Baby in different ways, took something that could have just been a song that maybe that was it, right? You listened to it, it was top 40 for whenever. But by making it something else, by adding to it, by creatively contributing to its expansion, new knowledge was created and new owners emerged. And so I think Call Me Baby is an excellent component for the philosopher and all of us who are thinking of educational reform. Lastly, I wanted to bring this point that he made about crowd-accelerated innovation. It basically builds on Call Me Baby in this way. I think that knowledge making, knowledge development, learning, if you will, can be accelerated with technology, because previously there was no way to connect, no way to engage or network, and the potential of being able to produce something with different points of view and different individuals contributing to it, and finding the right technology for the right project so that it is not replacing the learning process, but it really truly is augmenting it, is this idea of crowd-accelerated innovation that is derived from networks, from connectivity, from this virtual public space for education that I think the philosopher is allowing us to do. So I'm going to move on to the next phase of the presentation, because in this one I really, really wanted to think big. And for the idealists, I decided to do a project or propose a project called Genius Day. This would be Genius Day at SDSU. And I went to the official link just to verify that I was attributing to Genius Hour the idea. That's where I got it from. But Kouros introduced Genius Day, and when he talked about it as a once-a-week occurrence, the 80-20 model that some companies are doing, such as Google and others. So what I was thinking was that building on those very important elements to creating a new paradigm for learning, this idea of connectivity, this idea of ownership, this idea of learning, I'm proposing that for one day a week at SDSU, everyone is involved in this Genius Day. And the Genius Day can take the form of, if you want to figure out how to frame it so that it makes sense to faculty, it makes sense to staff, it makes sense to students, is that in addition to everything we're already doing, that we figure out how to carve this one day a week and build it as part of our annual professional growth requirements as faculty and staff. I think that would work really well for the faculty in terms of, their professional growth process that they're involved in. For staff, it had to be shifted a little bit, but I think that as an idealist, this is the big transformation that I would propose to a campus community the size of ours. We have 35,000 students, about 6,000 faculty and staff, a way to using Google Plus, using a connectivity software to incentivize and to drive personal learning. I think that we would make enormous strides in innovating and basically incorporating many of the elements of the innovator's mindset. And so I was really excited about this, and in fact, I think that it could work really well, and I'm thinking that I'm going to be proposing this at the next meeting of the University Senate as a subgroup, that we can study some form of this kind of ingenuity. Innovation is big at San Diego State. We have the Lab and Entrepreneurial Center and the Zon Innovation Platform, and we even just hired an idea person, and so I'm going to go pitch this idea to see if instead of having a siloed specialization group area, that we as an entire university can adopt this new form. And again, I'm thinking this big because of the influence of this class. Moonshot thinking for my unit. I have a vision to realign all of my student academic support services programs as courses with deep learning components. This reimagines student services as academic learning. And I created a few of the elements that I think would take me in that direction. But specifically, I wanted to bridge motivation and guidance activities that I carry out to academic and intellectual pursuits. And I think that's the innovation here. We all have offices and programs throughout the United States and universities of the size of ours that are similar. But I think the path here is to transition from a service delivery model to a learning model, where we're all contributing to the learning. And I think that could be positive. I also think we need to support and develop students' ability to collaborate and be connected learners. And I think we need to do so in a very strategic and direct way. So my new mission is to support them to think critically and create knowledge that interests them. And so I'm rethinking the organizational mission and vision of my office to meet this. And I actually have some very specific things that I want to do for my own professional growth. And they include adopting 2 points in the day where I'm going to take 15 minutes, my breaks if you want to call them, and really explore my professional learning network so that I don't lose track of them. I'm also going to be looking at software and making it a point that in every quarter I have to identify and think about new software that can help me accelerate learning. And lastly, I think I'm going to take an LDT class, another one, because this one has been very helpful in opening my vision of what I can do. So to conclude, I wanted to say that this class has expanded my awareness of how much I have not been willing to try. I think of myself as someone who uses technology to work, but if I can continue to grow my skill set, I hope to be able to say that I use technology